How do you know that God is real? It's an honest question, but the religious never have an honest answer because they've got religious mind poison coursing through their veins and they don't really care about the truth. Yet, if you watch dispassionately from the outside, you can see them sliding the goalposts around dishonestly. So, let's go watch one more example. So, here's a little channel that I'm assuming is some kind of youth outreach, which proves two things conclusively. First, they've got no clue how to answer questions intelligently, even questions that they pose themselves. And second, they really do have no clue what the hell they're talking about. And this is pretty typical stuff when you think about it, but these people never do, right? It's all just blind belief for a paycheck. It might not even be their own paycheck in this case. Religion is a scam. And here we go again proving it. Well, that's a good question. Unfortunately, I think we all know he won't have a good answer. Because when the religious talk about knowing their gods are real, and that goes for any religion, not just Christianity, that's based on faith, not demonstrable fact, and that's the problem. Because knowledge, by its very nature, isn't just, well, it feels right to me. Because the definition of knowledge is the sum of what is known, the body of truth, information, and principles acquired by mankind. Your beliefs don't remotely enter into it. Yet to the religious, far too often in my experience, they equate anything that they feel strongly about with knowledge. And that's not remotely how it works. But anyway, let's continue.
Hello, Refuge students. Our lesson for this week is on the question, how do you know God is real? And this is a really, really good question. And if you were to ask one of the authors of the Bible, they would be, well, look around. You know, Psalm 19 talks about how the heavens declare the glory of God.
Look at the trees! Yeah, that proves nothing. That's not knowledge. That's a bald assertion made for the sake of feelings, not objective facts. It's a claim that can be made for anything. Anything at all. Invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies are real. Look at the trees! Yeah, that doesn't get you anywhere, because any claim where the source can be anything you can imagine, that isn't a claim worth anything. That's really one of the major problems with religion. Any religion, as I said, is that it's all just giant empty claims and emotional beliefs that mean nothing in objective reality. You can't back any of it up with objectively derived evidence. If I can swap out any of their deities with the flying spaghetti monster and not change the claims any, and I can, then the entire thing is wholly irrational. They have to do a whole lot better than that. Wouldn't it be nice if they could?
Right, as we look around, as we see nature, as we see trees, and as we see insects, as we look around and see all these intricate things, they would say, well, this is totally a proof to show that God is real.
Except it's not. Now, yes, they were primitive in their thinking, and I think we probably have to grant them a little slack because at the time, that was probably some cutting-edge thinking from their perspective. Today, though, it's absurd and cringy. It's like thinking that disease is caused by evil spirits. And guess what? Some people still believe all of that nonsense, and those people, they're all religious, right? Why? Because religion hasn't actually learned anything. It's still using the same ridiculous, irrational thought patterns from centuries or millennia past because they just can't keep up with modern thought. Because These are not modern beliefs. This is the same kind of primitive crap that's been believed for thousands and thousands of years. Maybe it's time the religious did something about that, but if they did, then there's no way they could maintain any of these ridiculous, primitive, stupid beliefs.
But as we think about it now, we can often have a lot of doubts. We can have a lot of doubts, and that's completely okay. The reality is that God is more than willing to work with us in our doubts.
Well, that's your claim. And I love the fact that he says it's okay to have doubts, so long as you keep believing in the most unbelievable part of the entire religion. The fact is, these people ought to have doubts. They ought to look at Christianity and say, yeah, that makes no rational sense. It's utterly unsupportable by the evidence, and the only reason I believe it is because it makes me feel good. Because all of that is actually true. And those facts, once recognized, ought to make people realize that there's no good reason to think that Christianity or any other religion, of which all those things are also true, is worthwhile to believe in the first place. Because at the end of the day, it's positively childish to believe things for which you have no good, demonstrable reason to think are actually so. And the religious don't, because they just don't care. That's the problem. So long as it strokes their ego, they're going to keep believing because the facts simply don't matter. And that's kind of sad, isn't it?
And so when we think about this question, how do we know that God is real? Ultimately, it stems out of a reality that we can have a doubt that he even is real. We have a story where Jesus, he is with Thomas, and Thomas is essentially doubting that Jesus actually rose from the dead and was resurrected.
As any rational person should, because in our experience at least, dead people just don't come back. So the story of doubting Thomas is one where we ought to take notice. He was asking, at least in the mythical narrative, why he should believe the story of Jesus. And if you notice, Jesus went on to provide evidence to Thomas by showing him the holes in his hands and the wound in his side. It was evidence that changed his mind. It wasn't blind faith. But we don't get that kind of evidence today, do we? And why is that exactly? Because I'm exactly like doubting Thomas in the story. I will not believe until you prove it to me with objectively verifiable evidence that these stories, the stories in the Bible, the stories that have absolutely no evidence to back them up, are demonstrably true. And nobody else should do that either. I'm not doing faith wrong. It's the believers that are doing intelligence wrong. Yet they refuse to see that, right? What the hell is wrong with those people?
And so we see that in the end, Thomas actually has to see the holes in Jesus' hands. And Jesus, instead of being like, oh, Thomas, how could you doubt? Instead, he's completely gracious and completely willing to show himself to Thomas.
Which just goes to prove my point. So, where is Jesus today in any demonstrable way? Where is God? Where is the Holy Spirit? I don't know. Because so far, he's shown that believers have been absolutely irrational. Look at the trees! And that there's a story with zero corroboratory evidence about one of the disciples asking for and receiving evidence for the veracity of Jesus' claims. But what about right now? Because I'm not going to just look at the trees, and anyone who does in this context, they're just idiots. They really are. I want evidence. If Thomas was good enough to receive it, supposedly, then I am too. So where is it? Come on, God, put up or shut up.
And so as we think about doubt and as we think about this question, is God real? Ultimately, it all depends on faith.
In other words, you've got nothing. Because Thomas didn't have faith. Thomas required evidence, and he got it. So it doesn't depend on faith, does it? Faith is just the lie that you tell yourself when you've got no good reason to think that any of the crap in your head is actually so. It's just that the religious, especially the people who get a paycheck for it, like I'm assuming this guy does, they've got to have some way to keep the believers in line and showing up with open wallets, because this whole thing is just nonsense. It's wishful thinking and a giant con job. Come to our camp or whatever this is and give us your money and we'll fill your head with a load of unsupported and unjustifiable garbage. It might make you feel good, but that doesn't really matter. They don't want anyone pointing out just how absurd their beliefs really are. It's no surprise that they have their comments turned off because they're just not concerned about reality. Because reality makes them sad. And it probably costs them money. And they think we can't see right through it. And they're wrong.
Right, faith is the backbone of our relationship with God, right? That we ultimately need to have faith that God is real.
Thomas didn't. Why is that? I mean, other than the fact that Thomas likely never existed at all, and this is all just a big story made up by early church leaders to keep the faithful coming back for more. This comes up constantly in discussions with the religious. The idea that simply because they believe it, simply because it says something in their big book of multiple choice, well, that proves them right. Yeah, sorry, but it doesn't work that way. I don't care what you believe. I care what you can prove. I don't care what your holy book says. I care if you can objectively verify it, and funny, they never can, if you notice. Because they just don't care if it's true. They only care if they get that dopamine shot in the brain that makes them happy for a couple of seconds every time they think about these ridiculous ideas. They start with the preconceived notion that they have to be right because fifis, then they refuse to consider anything that might show them to be wrong, or at least cause their blind faith to be in doubt, because who the hell cares about reality, right? It's like talking to 6-year-olds. Really dumb, slow 6-year-olds. I wonder why.
Now, God's not dependent on this faith at all, right? God is not real or not real because of whether or not we believe.
Then what good is faith? Because I'm not interested in believing blindly. I want to know the truth as best as I can. The unvarnished, objectively demonstrable, evidentially verifiable truth. If you can't provide that, then go fuck off. You've got nothing for me. Unfortunately, there are a lot of really stupid people out there who are only too happy to dive in hook, line, and sinker because they really just don't care about the truth. They aren't concerned. So long as they get a little emotional comfort, they're happy. And you know who these people are? They're the same people who fall for the Nigerian prince scam. They're the same people who think Microsoft is calling to fix their computer, or that someone wants to offer them an extended warranty on their car. These people are just dumb. Whether anyone likes it or not, they need to be protected from their own stupidity, because in being so abjectly stupid, they harm everyone else around them. Objecting to bad ideas and poorly supported claims, that's societal self-defense, and we have every right to do so, and the religious are piss poor at defending themselves intellectually.
But that us actually having a relationship with God really, really depends on us having faith with God, right? If I'm going to have a relationship with a friend, I need to have faith that they're going to be there for me and that they're actually my friend, right? I need to have faith in those things.
You don't have to have faith that your friend is real, though, which is what this video is supposedly about. And I find it funny just how many apologists actually lose sight of what they're supposed to be talking about. The title of the video is, "How do you know God is real?" And he's gotten nowhere remotely close to that. All he can say is, just believe it blindly. Well, that's not knowledge. That's like saying, I have faith that I have superpowers. Yeah, that's just stupid. We're going to get to the end of this, and he'll have gotten nowhere remotely close to proving anything at all. He'll just make a complete fool of himself, as though that's any surprise, and we're all just going to roll our eyes and say, geez, I knew this was going to happen, because it always does. Because this is religion, folks. This is the abject stupidity of believing dumb stuff for no good reason. This is why they closed their comments, because they're terrified someone is going to come along and point out that all the things they're doing are completely wrong. It's not that hard to figure out, guys. It happens every frickin' day.
And so faith ultimately is the cornerstone for how we interact with God well. So we're going to be talking about this and so much more this week. See you soon.
Oh look, bait and switch. What else is new? Seriously, do these people really think that nobody notices? Well, nobody on their side does because their side is brainwashed. But anyone with two neurons to rub together, we all know what they're doing. Faith is nothing to be proud of. It never has been, and it never will be. It's all just a scam. Lies told from the pulpit to con people out of their hard-earned cash. The more people that show up in the pews every week, the more people that drop their money into the collection plate, that's what this is all about, right? Just keep deluding yourself and handing over the green. It's a tax-exempt scam on every street corner. And these people are dumb enough to fall for it because they just can't handle reality. It doesn't matter how many videos I do around here proving it, the religious are just too dumb to figure it out. And that's the reality that they're afraid of. It's really sad when you think about it because, yeah, the idea that people can be this dumb, even after we point it out to them continuously, that's scary. I mean, what the actual fuck?
Boom, 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 boom.